Thank you guys for coming. This is basically beach weather for San Francisco, so I expected a lot of you to play hooky and just head to Stinson or something, so it's great to have you here. I'm excited to be here. As Don mentioned, that we've got 45 minutes, or I've got 45 minutes to take you through what literally is a potluck of a whole bunch of stuff. So I think the goal was to connect you to a bunch of things that we've been working on. Some we've already shipped, some we're poised to ship within the products that a lot of you use. Hands up really quickly, by the way, for those of you that use one or more Atlassian product. How about the one, hands down, how about the hands up for folks that don't use any Atlassian products at all yet? All right, good, I don't have that much work to do then, I guess. So I want to connect you to things that we've been working on, and then secondly, I want you to be connected to some of the ways that we use our own products. Hopefully there are some lessons that you can take back to your teams and your companies. That's sort of the goal, kind of two-parter for me. And of course, there's a couple of deep dives. If there are things that you are hoping to hear about, there's a really good chance, if you don't hear them from me, you're going to hear them from a couple other speakers throughout the day. We need to begin with our singular obsession. And hopefully it's an obsession shared by a lot of you in the room. That is teams and teamwork. And this is literally a handful of Atlassians laying on the street outside of our Sydney office as a tribute to the thing that matters most to us, which is teams. I actually have tried to get the San Francisco office to do the same thing, but I think the streets in Sydney are a little cleaner. I couldn't do it. How many native San Franciscans or how many local San Franciscans? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and so that obsession has served us in kind of aggregating 112,000 companies with teams of all shapes and sizes that are using one or more of our products every day to unleash the potential of what their teams are doing for their businesses. And so on behalf of me, for Atlassian, thank you, because we wake up every day trying to work on better products and better ways to use those products to hopefully help you and the people that you're working with at your companies do more together. And we are very grateful for your support. But why teams? Like, why are we obsessed by them? We've said this before, but it's pretty simple. Teams unlock the world's potential. You know, the hardest problems, the things that we're trying to create and invent, are the result and the byproduct of what people are going to accomplish together. There might be a single sort of spark of genius from one person, but it requires them to communicate and clarify what they're trying to do with the people that are going to help them bring that thing to life. Teams are really a critical part of the answer to almost any question that we're trying to ask today as just people on the planet. And the world is moving faster than it ever has before, and so the things that we're trying to do together become more complicated and more complex. And sometimes that puts pressure on the people that are trying to accomplish those goals together. Even as we push to simplify things, sometimes that push to simplify produces better outcomes, but also more complex outcomes. Take the humble car. You know, the Model T over 100 years ago was actually a pretty simple thing to build and ship. It had 1,500 parts, took a relatively small team, 2.5 hours to assemble. Today, most cars have over 10,000 unique parts, and we would all agree they're considerably more sophisticated with all sorts of bells and whistles and features and things that they do that the Model T couldn't imagine doing. But they are a lot harder to manufacture and assemble and ship. And the competition and change in the automotive industry, I think, is a great example of some of the pressures on teams and businesses. Tesla has been an Atlassian customer almost from the very beginning. And today, as many of you know, they offered basically pre-orders for a car that they hadn't even built yet, and that they're still quickly trying to build and ship. And that really changed how that entire company, design, logistics, marketing, manufacturing, every team had to think about the work that they were doing together. That type of cross-functional, cross-team work inside of businesses is the most complicated. But it really is the work that separates good companies from great companies and small outcomes from ginormous outcomes. What does it take to create teamwork that crosses functions and boundaries and teams? It's a pretty simple formula that you've heard us share before. It is the combination of the right people, the right tools that we use to do our jobs, and the things that we do above and beyond both the people we're working with and the tools we use, our practices of improving sort of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve together. And we believe there is one really important foundational principle that can act as a force multiplier in those three pillars, and that is openness and open work. What does openness look like as a force multiplier? People that are open share. Like they share the things that they're working on, the knowledge that they've assembled, the information they know that would benefit other people. They're willing to adapt and change and consider other people's opinions and perspectives. Some of us have worked in companies that aren't open. We may describe them as political or bureaucratic, and that we often have an allergic reaction to that. Openness is a different relationship that we have with each other, the things that we're trying to do and the information that we have that we're using to do it. Products that are open by default encourage that kind of sharing and help people connect with each other's ideas, expertise, opinions. And practices help us open access to the right context. They help us establish rhythms, identify areas of improvement in our team's health. So daily stand-ups, retrospectives, team health checks, which Don was going to talk about a little bit later, they are as important to great teamwork as the tools that we use to connect and communicate every day. And you're going to hear a lot more about that throughout the day. Working open is really the biggest singular advantage that Atlassian just has as a company. It has been the force multiplier that has made us, and I'm biased, but has made us a truly great place to work and a truly great company that is focused on great outcomes. The way we work usually is the most surprising and delightful reaction that we get from new Atlassians that join. When they come in, they're just mesmerized. They're bewildered by the way that we use all the products that you use, and the degree of really radical openness and transparency and connection. So we've sort of seen this become a reality for us through kind of many years of practicing both better ways of using our products and better ways of being open and transparent. We've also seen this in many of our customers. So I'm really excited about the panel today with the 4 customers that Don mentioned, where I think they'll share some of that perspective in the way that not just kind of the products that you're using, but also the practices that they apply to those products help them. In an ideal world, everything would be open. It's easy to make it sound easy. Where work would just move seamlessly around teams, and we'd all be connected, and we'd know exactly where to find the answers to the questions that we have, whether that's in the head of someone we know or some sort of work product or piece of content that people have created in the past. In reality, it's a lot more chaotic and complex and closed. And part of what contributes to this chaos is the explosion of applications that a lot of us have access to bring into our teams and to bring into our companies. And many of these are really important specialty tools that help us do a particular thing much better. And solve maybe a problem that's been difficult to solve or a paper cut that we've experienced, take that away. But they also contribute to the disconnection and kind of the dislocation of the people that we're trying to work with and the information that we're creating and generating and sharing together. A little bit like building a car with thousands of more parts. Many of us use a lot of different tools. Some of you in the audience are going to use Bitbucket. Some of you are going to use GitHub or GitLab. Some of you are going to use Slack or Stride or Microsoft Teams or Facebook Messenger. Some of you are going to use Confluence or Google Docs or Quip or all of the above in different contexts. And I think that punctuates the point that this sort of explosion of choice creates a lot of complexity for our people, our colleagues, and our teammates to move across, and makes it more difficult to maybe find what we're looking for or to sort of move things downfield. And our goal at Atlassian is really to help bring order and maybe a little bit of harmony to this chaos and complexity. We want to sit at the center of this platform of teamwork, whatever flavor of platform that you want to construct and assemble, and provide a better shared perspective across that to you and the people that you're working with. So today, that's really what one aspect of it I want to share and connect you to is different ways that we're beginning to open work up across this diaspora of things you're using. And so I want to begin with Atlassian Home. Atlassian Home, if you're not familiar with it, is a singular place for you and your teams to stay on top of the work that you care about most. And the vision for this is for that to be work that moves across whatever technology that you're using as a team. It can provide, I think, a really important unifying experience across the things that matter most to you, to your team, to your project, and help you tune in better to the signal that might move across different applications or products that you're using. Often the interactions across these applications can help us feel busy, but not productive. We spend hours, all of us, answering emails or reading Confluence updates or contributing to Confluence pages or following tickets or projects in Jira, checking the status of a ticket, keeping up with the onslaught of chat and communication in different rooms or channels or whatever it is. It is a lot. And at the end of the day, maybe we wonder, did we focus on the right things? I felt incredibly busy at work today, but I'm not quite sure if I actually moved the outcomes that I needed further downfield. So we jump from product to product to kind of keep pace, to not lose out on something that might be important to us. And we imagine that Home can change that. Home can help us feel like we're not missing out and that we are focused on the most important productive outcomes. So this is Home today. And we've created it as a way to assemble all of the kind of urgent signals and notifications and for you to better tune those across many of the products of ours that you're using today. Confluence pages, Jira ticket updates, Stride Room messages, soon Trello Board updates. There's a bunch of things that you're using in synchrony across products that do different things. We give you a place to kind of track all those. It's a place we believe that you can start your day, and in many ways, you can finish your day, bookend all of the work that happens in between, and refer back to understand, what do I need to do next? What was I trying to focus on? And by the way, where was that? And what was the signal I was trying to tune into? And our vision is that this should span all the different things that you work on. Today, it is largely centered around the application, the Atlassian products that you're using. But tomorrow, we're focused on connecting it to other things: Box comments, Dropbox comments, updates in G Suite, from Google Docs to Google Spreadsheets. So there's a bunch of things that you might be using that I think are germane as important to what your team is doing as the things that you're using from us. So no need necessarily to jump from tool to tool to remember the context that you're in. You can hopefully get that from Home. It's not just about updates. It is also about taking quick action where that action would be most beneficial or productive. And so a simple example is you can see here a Confluence page update. It might be really important for you. And by the way, you might even be in a different context where it's important that you respond, but you don't want to shift. And so immediately you can respond to that context or that page comment in Confluence directly in Home without leaving, and then move on with the other things that you're trying to track. Home also has an activity feed. It helps you stay on top of sort of the streams of things that are being emitted by different systems. And to allow you to tune that at maybe a project or at a team level. So in this example, we're showing you recent work from pull requests in Bitbucket, or updates to Confluence pages, updates to Jira tickets and Trello boards. And we're really working on a lot of intelligence to make sure that that particular stream is tailored based on what we know about you, the context that you're regularly in, your team, your projects, et cetera. There's also a history that allows you to quickly refer back to the things that you've touched or tracked across those systems. And so again, rather than often a lot of us have this problem where we're like, man, I know that there's a really important update that I read. I just can't remember where it is and I need to refer back to it. Or maybe you've looked at something. This gives you that sort of collated or collected history. And then most importantly, cross-product search. So often we know potentially what we're looking for, but we just don't know where to look. And Home gives us a single place where we can say, I know I'm looking for this particular thing. I can just ask Home for that, and it will give me a summarized list of the results that match that across a number of different systems. This is really just the beginning of tying an experience together into something that we hope will make you and your teams more connected. But it can really be a command center for hopefully a different level of productivity. Bringing work and teams together is really a first step. But when we think about the challenges that many of us face, oftentimes, one of the most fundamental building blocks is how we communicate to each other. That's a biggie. And that's what's driven a lot of excitement for us around group chat and real-time messaging. And it's something that we focused on for a long time with HipChat. In the very beginning, Jira, for those of you that have been with it for 15 years, it is a communication product. It is not a real-time communication product, but it comes pretty close. And it's a way for us to talk about a bunch of things that matter in that particular context. I think for a lot of us, chat today didn't exactly solve the problem. In some ways, it fragmented the problem. It promised that it would reduce the noise from our email inbox. And I think largely what it did is it fragmented that noise across a number of different channels that now we need to pay attention to. And it is a burden and a drag on productivity for a lot of us. It's also an amplifier and an aid, I think, if we get it right. So, we've tried to fix this. This is why we created Stride. Stride, which we introduced to many of you in October of last year, I think borrows from a whole bunch of experience that we've learned along the way over the past 15 years around communicating, both asynchronously and synchronously. And Stride is really the unique combination, I think, of a bunch of really vital capabilities that come together in a way that we think is going to make a difference for how teams communicate. If you're unfamiliar with it, I'll quickly describe what it is. It is the combination of really 5 things. First, we believe just simple, beautiful human messaging. Great chat with all of the features that you would come to expect for a real-time synchronous chat system. It has those. Second, a cross-platform integrated real-time meetings experience. So oftentimes chat brings us right to the threshold but doesn't take us into the honeymoon suite. And we need to connect with people. Maybe that's a bad reference. I'm rethinking that just after it came out of my mouth. Oftentimes we need to connect to people in real time, and the shortest distance between A and B is just talking, whether that's one-on-one or one-to-many. Third, we really focused on connecting action and task, some way to say in situ, in context. There's a really important signal that we need to pull out and make sure that it's referenceable, and it is a higher order object that we can refer back to and we can do different things with. And so we built in these what we think of as collaborative tools to connect action and to-do and task and decisions that we've made directly in the context of the chat, of the discussion. Fourth is the ability to focus. And this is a big one for me. I don't even know how many rooms where there's sort of a constant stream of conversation. And sometimes you need to turn it off to focus on things that just need to get done, but you don't want to miss anything. You want a simple way to sort of refer and connect back into the things that you've missed that are most important. And then finally, extensions and add-ons through bots and apps and extensions where we can enhance the richness of this system beyond just communication and pull different applications and interaction patterns into it. So let me give you an example. Incident management is one where a bunch of different things come together for us, I think in a really important context. And teams need to work together urgently and dynamically. So the situation here is that a customer is having trouble maybe with our online ordering system or shopping cart, and so they create a ticket, in this case through through a Jira Service Desk interface, could be through Zendesk, but they create a ticket that says, hey, I've got a problem. That gets routed to the support engineer who then needs to troubleshoot or fix it. So that engineer identifies this as a problem, and this requires that person to pull together a bunch of different people cross-function to solve it for that particular customer. Oftentimes they don't know what the answer is, and so they need to troubleshoot it collectively with a bunch of people. Different teams, different offices. For many of us in our companies, different geographies, like a whole different dimension of complexity in trying to bring people together in real time, so we need to do it quickly. In Stride, real-time chat is a great way to sort of convene a bunch of different people into a discussion. So the support engineer creates a room in Stride. What we do typically is oftentimes this is already reflected in Jira as an incident we need to close. We can reroute this into a hot project where it gets a whole bunch of clarity and attention. We name the room the incident response room, typically the same name as the Jira ticket for clarity, and then provide sort of a URL back into Jira or some description of the ticket so people get the context. And so they create the room, and the support engineer is going to mention kind of the web admin in this particular case and bring them into discussion. This is probably a familiar pattern to a lot of us. We brought them into this dynamic room to solve this problem with some context that's sort of brought into the room together. So they have a little bit of a discussion. They bring the developer in the room. This is a situation where maybe they just need to talk it out. This is going to take us a long time to go back and forth with text. Let's just jump on the horn and get it solved. And so we've brought in basically this native capability to connect through one-on-one video, group video, a bunch of real-time facility around live connection. So that's what we've added to Stride directly. So you can see the button here on the right-hand panel is a video button. I click it once. I've got a bunch of facility to automatically create the meeting. There's no need to go to a separate system, copy and paste the URL, do a bunch of configuration, say, OK, I've set it up, let's go. It's one click button, and we're all in a video call. And we've worked on a bunch of really important capabilities, like phone in. I can invite externally with URLs. There's a bunch of other things. But the simplest execution of this is click a button and we're into a meeting. So we've done that. Everyone's in the room. Some people might be mobile, and they're going to dial in either with the app or with their phone natively. We're talking. We figure out that this was actually a bug that was introduced for Internet Explorer users, which 99% of the time is the source of the problem. So anyway, it was a bug in our fault. We're going to fix it and kind of go back to it. And so we've decided now that we're going to get this done, that we know the source of the problem, and we're going to assign somebody to resolve it. And this is a really important thing to capture in the context of a conversation. So in this particular case, at the bottom of the page, you see that we've declared the decision that we've made. And that decision is stored. It's pulled out of the conversation as a higher order object that can always be referenced and referred back to in the context that it was decided or discussed, which is really important. We can also assign a task. We can say, hey, listen, Amy, who's the developer, we're going to ask you to fix this, or you've agreed to go fix this. This is also a reference point that we can track as a team in this room to make sure that it gets done. And what I love about these two features is the ability to refer back to the really important things that were talked about and discussed. And that's often lost. Like, part of the reason that we pay attention to chat so much is that fear of missing out. What if I miss the part of the conversation where we decided to go in this direction or that direction? And now, if you're not there, the team can declare, we've decided. 3 weeks later, 3 months later, you can refer all the way back and scroll back to that exact part of the discussion where that decision was made. So here's where we pull those objects up as higher level objects that are always referenceable in the context of the room or the channel. So as I said before, a lot of us get chats all the time. There's rooms where things are flying by. We want to pay attention to it. Sometimes we need to turn it down. And so we've basically created this notion of focus mode in Stride that lets us declare to our teammates into the room, I've got a lot going on. I'm in do not disturb mode. And this is, seems like a relatively intuitive feature, but this basically turns off all notifications. And I think with a lot of kind of future expandability to this that we're excited about. But the main thing it allows you to do is not be disrupted. You need to go into kind of deep focus mode, whether that's writing code or writing a press release or solving a problem that's been introduced for a customer. And then when you can come back, you can get a simple digest summary of the things that you've missed while you were working on the things that mattered most at that particular moment. So we've gone back, we've fixed the issue, all done, customers happy. So a couple of features, there's a lot more here. You can sign up for it today, encourage you to give it a try. We've been using it now for almost about a year, and it's an awesome product, super excited about it. One more thing about Stride meetings. Because the context of that real-time video connection is so vital, like we imagine that it needs to shift from context to context. And there's often different times where you will be in a situation that you want the same ability to bring your team with you live into that situation. Certainly a room is one example, or just a meeting. But another example might be a Trello board. So Trello is, how many Trello users in the room? A fair number of you. So Trello is a bunch of things, but it is I think a wonderful way for groups of people to kind of organize information with a pretty limited or flexible but simple structure. And oftentimes when you're working on this and you're moving things around and you're kind of creating different content, it helps to bring the team into the conversation. And so Stride meetings is effectively an embeddable service that can wrap around, in this case, the Trello context, to amplify it with that real-time human connection. So all the members of the board can drop directly into a video meeting while they're dragging and dropping in real time the things that matter most to them in Trello. And also teammates can join over mobile. So everyone knows, a lot of people know what Trello does. What I love about the product is just its versatility, that you can use it for everything from managing your personal task lists and to-dos to more complex group collaborative planning endeavors. And so even inside of Atlassian, it's used for all sorts of things across all different functions, including this talk. You know, this entire keynote presentation was co-programmed and co-organized by a lot of different people inside of Atlassian that were participating in the things that we wanted to highlight, and who was going to orchestrate or organize that particular piece and kind of bring that together. It's a deeply collaborative effort for what can seem like a relatively simple endeavor. It helps us go faster, and rearranging things is as simple as dragging and dropping and kind of reordering things. But we use Trello for a lot of things, including in new employee onboarding. So new hires at Atlassian get a Trello board that walks through the instruction set that we can change and amend and adapt over time, that makes sure that things that are really important to the way that they on-ramp into the company don't fall through the cracks and aren't lost. Because starting a new job can be daunting and overwhelming. This is a simple way for us to help program kind of the first handful of weeks as an Atlassian. As you'd expect, Trello integrates with a lot of the other Atlassian things that you use daily. It also integrates with maybe a lot of other things that you use daily, and make sure that kind of planning and organization connection can be made to the other products that your teams are using. Those connection points we call power-ups. We recently launched a power-ups directory. It is loaded with different things that probably connect Trello to some other things that you're using either in your personal life or at work. And so encourage you to browse that, see if there's things that you might connect to. For everybody here, we've got an offer of a 3-month subscription, a free 3-month subscription to Trello Gold, which gives you 3 power-ups per board. Trello, the free product, gives you 1 power-up per board. It can be a different power-up per board. This gives you 3. So you can go to that URL and sign up and upgrade your Trello instance to Gold. This is another example from Atlassian. A lot of our Agile teams use Confluence and or Jira for retrospectives. We're not prescriptive of what you use. A lot of them have begun to use Trello for retrospectives. And a lot of you probably are familiar with the retrospective. It just gives us the ability, a point in time, to look back on the work that we just completed and figure out what we are happy with, what we're dissatisfied with, and where there's room for improvement. And so we can run retrospectives on teams or projects or like anything. What about a product? You could run a retrospective on a product. So a little bit of a Inception gag here, but what if we ran a retrospective on Jira software, and there's a bunch of things that we're excited about and some things that we can improve, and from that we work on an action item, which is really to improve the simplicity and usability of Jira software in the cloud, and that's what we did. We're excited to showcase it here for you today. So there was a lot there. Now I can't hear myself. But Jira's been on a journey for a while to simplify itself. And part of the challenge is one of the reasons that we probably love Jira, especially those of us in the room that might be responsible for its stewardship, is its configurability and its power and its sophistication and its ability to go off-road in a bunch of directions that our teams or businesses might need. And sometimes that gets in the way of users actually using the product. And so we've been really focused on finding a way to help people get more done and sort of discover the power and configuration and sophistication along the way as they advance with Jira. While Jira is a really powerful system for collaborative project tracking and project management, much of its power is and has been trapped behind often a single administrator, probably many of you in the room. New field requests, configuration updates, workflow changes, naming conventions in my particular project. There's a long list of things that many of you get asked to change. And probably you'd agree that it's hard to keep up with all that stuff. Some of you may have considered giving global admin rights to people just to get them off your back, which would be a terrible idea. But we've been working on ways to empower more users to tailor Jira around their specific team needs and to take some of that sophistication and either change it or progressively disclose it as they need it. So now a project owner, not just an admin, but a project owner, if they want to add a field to their project, can do that simply from the project settings as a project owner that an admin can give the ability or the rights to change. So we click here on settings, we go into details, we click on an issue type, we enter the field description for that issue type, we select it. In this case, we're going to add a multi-select field, we configure it, and then we're done. There you go. Project owner has that granular control to make some fine-grained tweaks to how they want their project to run for the people that are using it. And you're going to see even more features for project-level users. It's an area of an expansion for us, like the ability to add custom issue types or invite new users. There's a bunch of stuff we can imagine where we retain a lot of control and granularity for an admin, but a lot of that can be delegated down with proper training and guardrails to allow people to get more value of it. Another area is custom workflows, where you can have more finely grained access control at a project level, but you can actually, on a project-by-project basis, tailor the workflow that particular team needs. We've also simplified Jira's UI and search updates to make it easier to organize and access information. And we've introduced the brand new agility boards. So now any user can quickly create a column, move columns around on the fly, thereby changing the basic workflow that particular board is mapped to, so you actually don't need to go into a workflow editor to change it. You can just drag and drop the columns. Creating an issue on the board, as you saw in the video, is as simple as just clicking into the column and beginning to type, so easier than ever. We've also completely redesigned the issue detail screen, so all the information that a user would need is displayed, and some of the things that they need less are selectively hidden. This is also an area where team members spend a ton of time, so this simplified view helps more people get more out of Jira faster. And we're bringing in a lot more real-time developer tool information. So we're opening up the API to third-party developers that will enhance this issue detail experience in ways that are going to matter on a team-by-team basis. Finally, we've really worked on search. And so the brand new quick search experience allows us to simply type in free text and then search across boards, projects, issues, filters, a whole bunch of artifacts inside of Jira, and then quickly summarize for people without necessarily needing to understand JQL or a bunch of kind of query sophistication. I just want to look for something and get back a result that's going to be helpful. So we're really excited about these user experience improvements. We have a lot more planned in the coming months, so this is a space that you should watch carefully, especially if you're interested in how Jira evolves and changes. And if there are things that you want to see simplified or things that as an admin you absolutely want to give to your teams that we're not giving today, please talk to one of us. Raise your hand, let us know. So we've covered a number of feature updates and product enhancements on the cloud side. Many of you know that in addition to cloud, we offer 2 other deployment platforms that are on-prem, one standard server and one data center. Data center is self-hosted for larger deployments at scale, where you can deploy the products across a number of physical machines and nodes. And customers for each of these deployments ask for different things and have different needs. So for example, server customers are saying, hey, we want the upgrades to be easier. Cloud customers naturally don't care about upgrading because the upgrading is handled for them. Data center customers who might be supporting thousands to tens of thousands of their employees on an instance are asking for capability to improve their performance. Like, let me archive kind of old data in my system or old projects in Jira, so the resources of active projects aren't competing with things that aren't relevant or useful. And cloud customers are asking us to connect to a bunch of things that we just talked about in Home, kind of a number of other SaaS products that you're using on a daily basis. And so we prioritize what we do and where we're improving these products differently based on what we hear from you. We know that a lot of you host the applications on your own networks and on-prem for a whole bunch of different reasons, and you depend on them every day to get work done. It's a really critical area of investment for us. The biggest one is focused on scale, where you're taking these products on your own environments and you're going from hundreds to thousands, in many cases now tens of thousands of users, from hundreds of thousands of issues to millions of issues. And so we've invested a lot in this journey over the past 24 months and a lot in the past 12 months to make sure at scale that we're making the products richer and more performant. These are just a handful of the features that we've been working on across sort of the server and data center products over the past year. You've told us on jira.atlassian.com a bunch of things that are really important to help your team succeed and scale. We try to chip off as many of those as we possibly can, and I'm going to go over a couple of them. Over the past 12 months, there's been close to 20,000 votes that we've satisfied with issues that we've enhanced server and data center products with. So let's go through a couple. One that's top of mind is priorities per project. So this feature alone had about 2,500 votes for people that were declaring it's a really important capability for what I need to do. We announced that we were working on it at Summit US, shipped it at the end of last year for Jira Software and Jira Service Desk. Relatively simple feature to describe, harder to implement, but now per project you can create different issue priority schemes, which is a lot of what your projects and project users want. So every project and team can now, in their own language, describe what their priority levels are. They're not basically declared one that they can use. From blockers all the way down to minor, maybe it's kind of a SEV rating system, maybe it's some sort of creative way to describe what's important or not. It doesn't matter. It can be flexible and it can vary by project. So this is a great example of a feature that's really important at scale. If you're a 25-person team, or if you're just using Jira, for a really small organization, you might not need that kind of flexibility. It might be that there's kind of one scheme that's effective, but at scale, where you've got tens of thousands of different teams in organizations of thousands of people, it becomes more critical and more important. We also, you see us begin with features in the cloud and then bring them into server a little bit later. So a good example of this was mobile apps. How many of you are using Confluence Mobile on server? Not many, so you should. Like, it makes a difference. Like, I use it now every day, and as a way to connect to the things that you're working on most, and sort of as a companion reference point to how you use Confluence, it's killer. If you're not familiar with it, it basically keeps track of notifications and recent pages that you've worked on that you might want to refer back to or read or quickly address. You can read, comment, @mention people, kind of all the things that you would do. Maybe if you want to quickly do on the fly with simple formatting options, you can. And now server's a little trickier, right? Because if you're a cloud user, you can just log on with your username and password, and we can direct you to where you need to go. In server, there's a bunch of parameters that are specific to your company's instances that we need to know and refer back to you. And so we've had to work on kind of the login experience where we can help you find your site from where you actually visit Confluence on your browser, and then kind of record that so you don't have to remember it each time, whatever that URL exists for your particular company. So we've been fine-tuning this experience in cloud and then bringing that to server. We'll release the Confluence mobile app soon. Jira is quick on its heels, the Jira mobile app for server, so stay tuned. Some features that I mentioned are more pressing at scale and will probably be introduced in server first before they wind up in cloud. So there's a bunch of different patterns based on what the needs are and based on what we're hearing from you. A good example of this is canned responses. So canned responses is, again, a relatively simple thing to describe, but often the number of requests that you're getting into your service desk scales faster than the service teams. And so we need to figure out ways to do more with the people we have, to do more with less. So canned responses lets agents basically contribute to a knowledge base that, with pre-built text and answers, that they can dip into for these repeatable requests that we might get on our IT or other service desk. So in this particular example, I can go into my response. I can click the canned response button. I can search or select for a pre-built textual response, append it quickly into the response, hit submit, share, and I'm done. So what would have taken me maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes of rinse and repeat, I can simply grab, edit, modify, and send. So this was shipped first to Jira Service Desk Server, will be coming soon to cloud. Sometimes features that work great for, this is the hard part about scaling, that work great for tens or hundreds of people don't work so well in an organization of thousands. And it is hard to kind of thread both of those needles. So I'll give you an example in Confluence that we've just introduced called Smart Mentions to server. So most of you know how to @mention people in pages to bring them into the conversation or to clue them into something that you're working on. In a small organization, just @mentioning people can be a breeze, right? If I'm trying to mention Denise and I'm only in a company or a team of 25 people, that's awesome. I've got one Denise. But what if I have 500 or 1,000 employees? What if I work for a company of only Denises? That becomes harder. And so Smart Mentions basically keeps track of the Denises that you mention most, also keeps track of the Denises that are relevant to the context that you're actually mentioning them on. Are they a member of this particular project or a user of this project? Have they commented or contributed to this page? And with local caching in server, it's zippy. It's lickety clean. You don't have to wait for Confluence to look at a database of a whole bunch of users in your system. It knows the one that you're trying to mention most frequently. We are over 2,500 Atlassians. We've been using @mentions for a while. It makes a huge difference because we've got, I think, 20 Denises or more. So here's an example of making features that have been in the products for a while work better at scale. And really, scale and performance is the theme song of the data center product family and product line. And most of you know that this product line extends across every one of Atlassian's major products. They are focused on supporting really large deployments, really above 500 users, but all the way up to tens of thousands. Some of you have those. And making sure that we're providing better ways for you to tune and adjust the system so it performs at scale, and then manage the system for the tens of thousands of people that are relying on it every day. So in Jira, as an example where we introduced zero downtime upgrading, where you can cycle through an upgrade of Jira node to node to node without bringing the system down so users can't use it. And the big theme there is it means that you don't have to schedule an upgrade on your weekends and sort of take personal time because people are relying on the system that they use. And that's fine for a system like Jira where everybody that is really using Jira is sort of an active contributor to Jira. Confluence is a little bit different. About 80% of people that use Confluence are consuming, not contributing. That's pretty common. A lot of us are reading the work of others maybe, but we're digesting a lot and then maybe more minimally contributing back. So we had to attack this problem a little bit differently, and we did so with a feature that called read-only mode in Confluence. Read-only mode basically allows an admin to say, I'm going through an upgrade process. The system is effectively off limits for new contribution and interaction, but it's available for the 80% of users who are regular consumers of what's there and what's important. So an admin basically can turn on read-only mode through a maintenance setting or maintenance screen. You see the bar at the top. That's text that you can manipulate. And then what you'll notice is a user basically can't edit a page. They can't create a new space. All of those capabilities are basically unavailable. So you're not contributing to a system that you're actually going to upgrade. So we listen a lot to you, and the roadmaps for both cloud and server and data center are informed by a number of different things. The things you're telling us you want, and how you vote on those and declare how important they are. Also, just talking to us here and learning more about your deployments, spending time with you at Summit. There's a bunch of stuff that sort of goes into how these products get shaped. So we've talked a lot about products. I'm going to close with just a brief mention about the other thing that you're going to hear, which is practices. It's a really important complement to the other kind of two pillars of teamwork. Often when we use even the same tools, we use them differently. And each team is kind of a different collection of people and personalities and skills and experiences. And the really curious thing is sometimes a lot of us ignore the basics of what makes high-performing teams a high-performing team. Like, do we have a shared understanding of what we're trying to do? Is that declared somewhere that we can refer back to? Do we all know what we're doing and why we're doing it? Do we have the right people on the team? Are we balanced? Do we have the roles that we need and the skills and experiences? Do we know actually how to measure progress along the way? We spend a lot of energy inside of our companies often measuring the performance of individuals and not enough time measuring the performance and health of groups of individuals that are trying to accomplish something in common. And so we, 2 years ago, basically studied some of our own healthiest teams and tried to understand, like, what are the patterns that exist in these groups of people that make them healthy, that make them effective. And we created a simple framework. We call it the Health Monitor. Dom's going to talk a little bit about it later, for helping teams identify, which of these 8 characteristics that we bubbled up they had. How were they healthy? And so we call this a health monitor. You can run a health monitor on a sheet of paper with a physical whiteboard in a room. We've provided a Confluence blueprint, so a template inside of Confluence that allows you to sort of do this. So you can track improvements over time. There are Trello Board templates that you can use. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. But the whole point is, it is a first step in understanding, hey, we're 5, 10, 15 people that are trying to do something together. How do we get better? Like, we maybe have the right tooling. We maybe have a really exciting project to work on. What are the other structural pieces that we need in place to make sure that we're humming? So we call the things that we recommend to you to sort of address some of the deficiencies plays. We've organized it into a big thing that we call the Atlassian Team Playbook. It is available online at this URL. Dom is going to do it a lot more justice a little bit later. So in conclusion, I've talked about a bunch of stuff from product updates across cloud, server, data center, a little sneak peek at what Dom's going to cover. I think the meat and potatoes of the day hopefully will be the incredible stories we hear from our customers, and of course the opportunity to talk with all of you at breaks and during happy hour. And last thing is, there is a user group. If you weren't plugged into that, I think immediately following this, Matt, it's at 7 o'clock here. If you like this sort of connection of a bunch of us sharing stories and trying to figure out how to do things better, the Atlassian User Group program is the best conduit for that kind of connection. You will find people from all walks of life that you can either learn from or teach. So with that, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the day.